Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Cerberus at the Improv. I am one of your hosts, Payman Ascari. I am joined by not only my co-host, Mr. Timothy Knight, but the producer of that wonderful intro video you just saw. Tim, how are you?
I'm good today, thank you.
Tim, what was your motivation? What were you thinking? How do you get the inspiration for these videos?
Well, first off, I have no money, so it's not like I can do a quality production. But I don't know. It's when we were this good. We made that maybe a month after we started, maybe even earlier than that.
And don't forget, Tim. Today is our first anniversary.
Is that today?
Yes.
I forgot to buy you guys any gifts. I'm sorry.
Buy you gifts. We're still on the show. That's gift enough. Did that sound genuine, Andre? I rehearsed that, Andre. Did that sound genuine?
Yes, of course.
See, this is why I'm not married. I could never remember the anniversaries.
All right, I never remember the anniversaries. Well, the first year it's paper, isn't it?
Is that true?
There's actually a list. Like
divorce paper.
The white man has to figure it out, right? So there's actually a list that every year a gift will be given, right?
Yes.
To your spouse that is in some form of something. So yeah, paper, cash, or fiat, whatever makes you happy, right? And so that's when you see diamond anniversary and stuff. That's 25 years, is it?
No. Gold is 50. Diamond, I think it is 60.
Diamond is 60.
I think. I'm not sure. I will never reach that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think the 7th one is divorce if you can afford it.
Andre, it almost feels like it's been a month since we last saw each other. I guess the last episode we did was with Leighton Gray, so it was a different type of Cerberus. How are you doing, Andre?
I'm doing fine. Fall is very nice here in Quebec. We have no rain. I would say that's maybe the most hardest part, but it's very nice, very interesting. Very interesting time. Except for Quebecers or French or Canadian, I would say. I will not say French Canadian. I used to say French Canadian, but I will say Canadian because you have English Canadian, you have Italian Canadian, Greek, Polish, Ukrainian, whoever wants to stay in Canada. So I'm fine.
And all is quiet on the Quebec front. Nothing bad is happening. Everything is good there, I hear.
Well, they did not resuscitate the FLQ, le Front de Libération du Québec, yet, but you still have something in the pot. They're trying to boil something to make people vote for the actual government, which is they call the Bill of Law number 1. That would promote the Constitution of Quebec. And it's not a constitution, it's a bill of law. So it's like they're proposing a bill of law to write a constitution. They will vote on it, and most probably they will impose this vote because they are in majority now in the National Assembly.
Okay.
And I could say, it's quite interesting because when I proposed this for this show, when I discovered this, you can say that the province here does not protect any law at all. And the funny part is even the Parti Québécois, who is the sovereignist party, is against this bill. So everybody is unhappy about this bill. And if we introduce the idea of the bill I can talk about the actual government. If you bring
Yeah. So I'm
the
going to
first,
bring the PDF up and I'm going to hand it over to you. And I'm going to do what I do on dates. And I'm going to go into my catatonic happy place. It looks like I'm paying attention, but I'm really sleeping.
you look at your smartphone. You know, AI will tell you how to behave. The first statement: a province that doesn't protect natural law is a dead society. So I will refer to what Charles Fichtner was saying a month and a half ago when we had him on the show. You know, principle, the law is supposed to be something that is higher than the state, that is, you know, a moral code. And the actual government, which is formed by the Coalition Avenir Québec, the Coalition Avenir Québec coalition is it's like a melting pot of some ex MLA from the Parti Québécois, from the Liberal Party, and the leader of the Coalition Avenir Québec, who is the Prime Minister of Quebec, François Legault. He was a Minister of Health in the Parti Québécois government in the 1990. Then he became a Minister of Finance, I think. And the funny part is he's the one who created Air Transat. I don't know if you know Air Transat. Air Transat, it is a private plane company. And he screwed his business partner and he sold his share. I think it was in 1992, 1993. And then after that, he bought back what was Quebec Air, and he created Air Transat. And after that, he started to be a member of the Parti Québécois. And in 2012, he left the Parti Québécois and he created the Coalition Avenir Québec. And they are forming the government since 2018. So they had a majority government in 2018. They defeated the Liberal, the the Parti Québécois, and the Québec Solidaire, and they were reelected in 2022 against all odds because we were in COVID pandemic with the curfew before Christmas, with the fine of $6,000, with the mandatory mask, the vaccine passport, and they had a super majority. So I told myself, Quebecers, they are a little bit schizophrenic. I don't understand. But since then, they invest a lot in the electric vehicle battery sector. And you can go down a little bit. They lost about close to $1.5 billion in the last 5 years.
A couple of things before we get started. First of all, anybody watching, if you could restream the room, we'd greatly appreciate it. We want to get our audience count up. Sue Kellen Dyer made a comment. I'm like, what is she talking about? It just sounds like a Midsummer Night's Dream. I think she's talking about your intro video, Tim. I think that's a positive, but you take it any way you like. The other thing, Andre, before proceeding, and Tim, if you want to jump in and ask any questions, for the audience, Andre, can you define what natural law is, or how would you explain it to like a child?
Well, we have natural law. I will give you an example, very simple. Water is not an asset. Water is something that you need to live, air, food. So nature provides us with goods. We create structure, and the natural law, whether you believe in God or not, those laws are universal, and we can refer to the Declaration of Human Rights. We have to rely on that. Capitalism will always try to monetize or privatize assets or basics needs to be able to sell them to you. So I would say natural law. And if we refer to the Constitution of Canada, the supremacy of God and the rule of law, you have two types of laws. You have the law of man and the law of God. The law of God or the law of nature. So I would define natural law as something that is close to nature.
Okay. Tim, any questions before going?
I can add to that from my perspective, going back to Charles Fichtner, who modified my approach on filtering policy, where he mentioned principles filter policy, and policy filters projects or programs. And if you use that principle, if you use that concept in government or business organization or of organizations of any type, where you start off by ignoring the preeminence of natural law, you will always be at risk of the self-involved leadership who, ignoring the effect of natural law, will try to bend man to their will. Right? So if you don't respect gravity, gravity will remind you who's boss. Right? So if you don't respect life, life will remind you that it is preeminent. Right? So if you don't respect people's sovereignty as individuals or as persons, they will rise up and remind you. Look at the Great English Reformation, right, where they ended up, killing Charles and whatnot, and then that all goes sideways because Oliver Cromwell was mad, just plain mad. Right, good intentions. He even claimed, to operate with under a Puritan, but the Puritan thing itself doesn't acknowledge humans. So what Andre is talking about, what he's pointing out very clearly is, if you ignore the living thing that is the world outside and its rules, the physics of the world, spiritual and physical, the relationships, if you ignore that and try to carve your own, what did just society, right, which is, I think Trudeau Sr. used that phrase, toward a just society, and Quebec is playing at this, but it's this document's painful to watch because, as Andre identified, you're ignoring natural law. You ignore natural law, your society is dead. But outside your door, outside your legislature, are living people. Sooner or later, they will remind you who's boss.
That's a good observation, Tim. Outside, for example, of the border of a province, you will have people with maybe different ideas. What I can explain now, it's a non-exhaustive list of the failure of the current. Sorry, I should have removed the word pathetic. Little government regime. Nordvolt, $700 million, including the Quebec pension plan that invested in this. So you have about $270 million that they cannot recover from Sweden. 150 million for electric school bus. Taiga Motor, which is electric recreative vehicle, they subsidized the company, $150 million losses, other losses. This is the actual government we have in Quebec now, and not counting what they did with the COVID mandate and the tyrannical decree that they were using for practically 2 years, with the agreement of the official opposition, with the agreement of all the MLA in the National Assembly. So that's the actual government that we have. And they are arriving and they're proposing a bill of law to create a constitution for the state of Quebec, I would say the nation of Quebec, without consulting the population, and saying that it will be the law of law, and we will even pass it. What's the name? Bayon, in French, when you impose a law. I forgot the expression in English. You impose a law because you're in a majority. So you will impose it whether you like it or not. The funny part is that the Parti Québécois disagree with this. The Parti Québécois is a separatist movement. It is quite funny. If you go a little bit lower and you bring the tab, I think it's the second one, the second document. Yes, this one. So that's the projection of the for the general election in 2026. What we see now, you see that the Parti Québécois would form the government with 74 MLA. There you have 125. Look at Coalition Avenir Québec in third place. This is the actual government.
Sorry, Andre, you're going too fast. You said, so you got the 5 parties on the left, the Parti Québécois, Liberal Coalition, Conservative, Quebec Solidaire.
Yes.
This is for the next election in 2026. They're projected to get 36% of the vote, the Parti Québécois, which would be 74 seats. Or
Yes,
is that what was the 125 you mentioned?
that's the total. 125 is the total MLA in the National Assembly. If you go just a little bit more down,
Oh, the
you will see.
338 is just the name of the polling company.
Yes, that's from election 38 Canada. The actual government has 83 MLA now in the National Assembly. They have a majority. And now, with the projection for the election in 2026, they would fall in third place with 9 seats. And if you are under 5 seats, you lose your official status as a party. They would be wiped out of the electoral map. Can you imagine that? This is a party that was created in 2012, 2013. You would say 12 years after, they disappear completely. So they are in panic, and they want to, attract, I would say attract flies if you want, attract Quebec citizen to support them in a project of constitution. Of course, the Parti Québécois is against it, even if the Parti Québécois is supposed to do the independence of Quebec. So I just wanted to show what is happening on the provincial electoral map. We still have 1 year before the election, but the way they are destroying the structure of the province, I would doubt that they would be able to be reelected, and they will not even form the official opposition. So they are in panic. And that's why I say, of course, when we see how they manage or how they govern in the last 7 years, this is a nightmare. A nightmare. I'm not talking about the carbon tax. I'm not talking about, we will talk maybe later about some topics of this bill of law. And everybody's against this.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Of the 125 seats, how many does Parti Québécois currently hold?
I think it is, if I'm not wrong, 6 or 7, 9. It's very low. 11, I think.
So if the current coalition Avenir Quebec wanted to ram through this bill, this constitution bill, would they be able to before the election?
Well, the actual day they wanted to pass the bill in June. This is funny. June 24th, 2026. They want to pass the bill before the summer break, and June 24th, it is John the Baptist Day in Quebec. It is national holiday. So they want to federate people. And after that, they would prepare the summer electoral campaign, and they would arrive in October, and they would be reelected. This will not happen. And look, what is funny, look at the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party of Quebec has 14% voting intention, and they have no MLA at all, and they would arrive at 9. And now everybody is angry in Quebec because Quebec is a socialist province. They hate conservative. You think Quebec hates Trump? They hate conservative even more. They always vote for the Liberal or the Bloc. So imagine if the Conservative Party of Quebec, there was a by-election a month and a half ago, and the leader of the Conservative Party of Quebec, Éric Duhem, was not elected. He was defeated, and everybody was opening champagne. So
let me just mention something. We forgot to mention this. We're talking about the provincial elections in Quebec. I know that three of us know this, but this isn't the Bloc Québécois, which is federal.
No. This is provincial. This is provincial. The Bloc Québécois is on the at the federal level. It's very important to, and the Conservative Party of Quebec is snobbed by the Conservative Party of Canada. You can imagine that. You say, wait, it's not possible. So look at the projection of the poll, and you said you understand why the actual government is in panic. They will lose, and they will be wiped out. So they will try anything to appeal to the emotion of people. Says, "Oh, we're Quebecois, we are Quebecois, and we have to all vote. We have to be united for to save the province against the big bad English Canada." Blah, blah. It's it is a caricature now, but anyway, that's what is happening now, and this bill of law is nothing else than just I would say pandering. And
Sorry, Tim wanted to say something.
yes, go ahead, Tim.
Are the other parties able to block this law past the election call
No,
and thereby kill the law?
they cannot because they are in minority. They had the government as a majority. So if they want to pass the law, they will pass it. And they have the intention to pass it.
And this is starting to become a pattern across the country, if not already at the provincial level, where the majority government barely holds a majority and has enough backdoor strings to push through pretty much whatever they want.
Yes, and I can make a remark toward this situation and the Alberta sovereignist movement and what happened in Quebec in 1995. In 1994, it was the government of Quebec, who was formed by the Parti Québécois, who was leading the referendum. This is not what is happening in Alberta now. It is not Danielle Smith who's leading. It's grassroots movement, which I think is okay. But this is maybe lack of strategy. Anyway, toward what is happening in Quebec now, in my opinion, it's simply panic. They are in panic and they don't know how to react. Now, if you go to the bill of law, we can look.
Before we do that, a big thank you to Sundown95 for reposting the stream and the Remanded. Thank you very much. It helps us get our audience count up. If everybody else could restream, we'd appreciate it. Where should I go, Mr. Meloche?
Well, there's something Sue also wrote, no MOU, no memory of I forgot the expression of understanding. No, there's nothing. Nobody was consulted for this bill of law. If you go in the bill of law, which is the third, no other party are supporting it. No, at all. Everybody is against it. So that's the bill of law. And if you go in the text, we can go maybe at the page 2. And you have it. Is it in highlight in yellow?
If you want me to go to the highlights, it's here.
Yes, please. So the first one, if you go a little bit higher, I will just read the text. It's quite fast. Yes. The Act respecting the constitutional autonomy of Quebec primarily established the guideline for parliamentary and government action related to Quebec's constitutional autonomy. So if you go a little bit more down, so they say, okay, that's an act that we will vote, and they want to initiate something. We don't know what they will initiate, but if you go at the yellow highlight in yellow, so in addition, it explains Quebec participation in the process of appointing senator and Supreme Court judges. So if you go a little bit more low, the bill amends the Constitutional Act 1867, in particular by removing the article on the Legislative Council of Quebec by replacing the provision of the legislation of Quebec with the provision on the Parliament of Quebec. So they want to modify the Constitutional Act of 1867. Quite funny. They don't ask the permission to the rest of Canada. So how can they do that? In my opinion, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
They cannot.
They just cannot. They just cannot. And if you
Are you waiting for something, or?
No. It's because I want you to go a little bit more down. Page 3. Okay. The bill also amends the Charter of Human Rights and Freedom. Let's stop there. The human right and freedom, the Charter of Right, is a Canadian law. We want to amend it. Okay, we want. How do we do this? You can use the withstand. How do you call it? Withstanding clause, non-withstanding clause, and you have a certain mechanism to be able to change this. You cannot do it unilaterally.
I
So
have a
you
question.
yes, go ahead.
There's no such thing as the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms in Canada.
No, this
They're
refers
referring to the Charter of Rights. That's a separate document.
exactly, and behind that you have the United Nations. You have, instead of referring to what we call a national law, what we can disagree with the Charter of Right. You know that Quebec did not sign this document, but still we are bound by it until we use the notwithstanding clause, but we're still bound by it. But now they're referring to something that is quite different, because they're not referring to what the actual law in Canada. So there's something behind. If you go a little bit more lower, in addition, the bill amends the
Wait,
code, the civil
Andre,
code.
before going lower, do you want to comment on this line? It also provides the event of in the event of a conflict between the exercise of the right to equality between women and men and the exercise of freedom of religion, the former prevails.
Well, that's why I tell you where did you see religion in this? There's no.
The last sentence of the first paragraph.
It also provide that in the event of conflict between the exercise of the right of equality between, but there's no mention of a religion here.
Exercise freedom of religion, the former prevails.
The last line.
Oh, okay, the last one. Okay. Between women and men and the exercise from the former prevail. It means that they want to wipe out what is, the right to worship a religion. There will be no. We already have this with, I think it's the law 99, with the secular state and the impossibility for people to wear a cross or wear signs, and this law will be challenged in the Supreme Court. So they want to wipe out all the possibility of worshiping a religion in Quebec. They will say it's a private domain, and you cannot even show your religion in public. Well, that's not what is happening now. When we see all those Muslims who are praying in the street of Montreal, that's quite a contradiction. The the civil code is already implemented here. We don't have the common law. We have the civil code that was influenced by the Napoleon Code, that was not created by it. I think Charles Fichtner mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. So that is something that is close to the old regime in France. And
Tim, do you want to comment on what I pointed out?
What I'm noticing is they use the words Constitution of 1867, and I think they're just using it to trigger the Francophone audience. And they use the phrase Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms, which does not exist. So they're relying on the ignorance of the public and the disgust response of Francophones who hate Anglophones, right? So they're reaching into their base with, this is lies.
Well, that's
on first reading, it looked like it's just straight up woke incompetence.
Well,
it's lies.
I will comment on the woke incompetence a little bit later, but I think you're right. And most people will not even read this text. It is a 43 pages text. There's so much. It is so hard to read because it's first of all, it's very boring, and there's nothing fundamental. Philosophically speaking, there's nothing fundamental. How to protect minorities, how to protect the tyranny of the majority. We had the debate yesterday with Sue Calendario in one of her space, and she was expressing her concern about what could be the tyranny of a minority. With multiculturalism, every minority wants to have his share of the pie, and there's no consensus, no national consensus. So she was right in a sense, but the idea of a constitution is supposed to protect the most vulnerable people. The majority is supposed to have moral law, is supposed to govern with reason. We always use common sense, and the minority are supposed to be protected. This is not what this bill is all about.
So
And go ahead,
let me
Tim.
jump in. I'm being guided by Sue Kellen Dyer. She's in the comments. So she says, not how I read it. Payman, read that clause again. And she believes they're writing that equality men and women supersedes religion. I'm going to read this again, and I'm going to tell you what I think. It also provides that in the event of a conflict between the exercise of the right to equality between men and women and the exercise of freedom of religion, the former prevails.
Yes.
I think what they're doing is, and this is my opinion now, I think they're falling in the polls. They need to get some of the right wing people, and there's a lot of people are upset. They brought in so many immigrants and so many Muslims that they're worried about Sharia law, so they're throwing this in there to get those votes. That's my opinion.
I think you're right. I think you're
when
right.
When I read this sentence, I read, in an effort to promote intersectionalism, we will suppress religion.
Yes.
It is a way to see it. But don't forget one thing. What we are witnessing in Quebec since a couple of years now, it is massive collective prayer. And think about an environment where you cannot go and pray or worship God if you're a Catholic, but you can worship Allah if you're a Muslim. The police of Montreal, I will take this example, are overwhelming people with their prayer everywhere, and it's not they're not praying anymore. It's a political act. We can see it. So I think there's a part in this that they want to prevent this type of clash. Don't forget that a couple of weeks ago, Quebecers started to wave Quebec flag, and they started to bring Catholic. They started to pray in front of churches, so they could. So they were trying to, I would say, counter protestation against the influence of Islam here in Quebec, and we see it everywhere. So it could be a way to undermine the grab by the Muslim community, and it is not a joke. It is not a fake. This is a reality. We see it everywhere. We saw what is happening. The Antifa are allied with the Muslim community here in Quebec. Maybe you don't see this in the rest of Canada, but here it's a very big problem. Not in Quebec City, but in Montreal. And when you have the policy the policies are made in Montreal, it's where it is. That's where you have the most seat in the National Assembly. So that could be a way to diminish the power of the religion, equality between men and women. But
well, that's the cover story. That's the cover story.
Yes, that's
right?
good. Exactly.
Right? Gender equality, and they'll use gender equality, not sexual equality. They'll use gender equality because then they can break into intersectionalism.
That's exactly
to protect intersectionalism, where a trans man says, "I want to be a priest in a Catholic church," and the Catholic Church says, "I don't think so, pal," and then the government steps in and says, "I think so, church, or you'll shut down."
Yes. So I think you're right, but like Payman said, because they're falling in the poll and they do not control the protest. The Palestine protests are out of control. The Muslim prayer in the street are out of control. The Antifa movement is out of control in Quebec. And the government, the city of Montreal, the mayor of Montreal doesn't do nothing. And the premier of the government of Quebec doesn't do nothing. They are silent. So they use something to try to undermine the potential conflict between communities. That
This this is Germany in 32,
it's a good
where
good
right,
comparison.
the brown shirts are basically being ignored by the Weimar government, and the brown shirts are out there pushing back physically against the Communist Party or communist sympathizers. They're pushing back against American synthesizers. So all these sympathizers, so all these small Antifa, right, Muslim, all these small politicized organizations are are in early physical conflict of chest bumping matches, and this is happening now in Montreal in particular. And the escalation of violence is, as we noticed late last year, when they were in a Muslim crowd was kicking in windows and doors and damaging the downtown buildings and stores. This is 32. I think it was around 1932 or so, leading up to was it called the beer parlor putsch? I can't remember what, but there was they were the brown shirts were chased out of a debate or a rally, and it spilled into the streets and turned into a big fight, and a lot of them were arrested and whatnot, and that's when the Weimar began to really pay attention to them. But that has not yet happened in Canada, where the police have to step in and make mass arrests. But that day is coming.
And who will they arrest? Because I'm not sure they will arrest what I would call peaceful Muslim who go and pray and block street everywhere. This is starting to be a question of safety, and that nobody's acting now. If
So-
you go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
We should
In summary, the Muslim people are not afraid. And
They're
the
not
Christians-
afraid.
They're not afraid, and the
They're not
Christians
afraid.
are, and the Christians are. So then, if I'm a government and I need to be making some space to maneuver and get what I want, right? And the Muslims are like, really don't care what you do about your government. I'm going to go and do my own thing and build my own community. Leave me alone. And so they'll go, well, the government says, well, we need somebody's money, we need somebody's power, we need to take away something from somebody. So they go after the Christians because the Christians have rolled over and said, govern me harder, daddy.
Well, the idea of Christianity is I would say, being tolerant and forgive. How do you say this? To forgive. So this
is it?
Well,
Western Christianity is a pussyfoot version of what started.
I disagree with what I said, but nonetheless, many people think like that.
I think this isn't about Christianity. I think this is problem, reaction, solution. It just happens to be that the Christians are the ones that are getting punched in the face, but you have a government that brought in a bunch of Muslims, and the Christians are not happy with that. But the government's like, okay, fine, we're going to clamp down on religion. It's like, wait, no. Get
exactly.
Rid of don't take away our power.
This is exactly what they're doing, and it is damage control. They say, okay, if there's a problem with religion, we will ban all religion, including
the ones we just brought in. Yeah.
Exactly. If you go now to the page 8. So the Constitution and the primacy of the Constitution. First of all, it's a bill of law. It's not a constitution, because a constitution has to be agreed by the people. The Constitution of Quebec is the law of laws. Like we were talking earlier, there's no moral code. There's nothing that is described here to, it's like good governance. That's okay to have good governance, but it's not enough. It's not enough. You need a moral code, you need structure, you need institution that will comply or that will be independent. We will talk about the justice system a little bit later. So when you look at this, the states replaces natural law without describing any moral boundaries. If you go a little bit more lower, this is funny. In English, the people of Quebec are made up of all Quebecers. You say, okay, that's okay. But in French, it's not quite the same. In French, you read, the people of Quebec are made up of all Québécoises, feminine, and Québécois. And since a couple of years, they always use, even politicians, they use les Québécoises et les Québécois, the women and the men, always putting the women first. And in French, it's a mistake. In French, the masculine form includes the feminine and is supposed to be neutral. That's French language. This is an ideology. What they're pushing is a feminist society, a feminine and a feminist society based on emotion and not on reason. This is quite funny because here you see more and more women in municipal election. You see more and more women in municipal council, and the management is chaos because they're ruling or they're governing with emotion and not reason. We were talking often about logos. So that's a characteristic that they can hide because in the English translation, Québécois and Québécois will be amalgamated together under the word Quebecers. But this is when you read the text in French, everywhere it's Québécois and Québécois. You put the women first, always. That goes against the language, the French language, the structure of the French language, because the masculine is not, it's not a form of discrimination. It's like when you use man and you use mankind. Just remember, Justin Trudeau was talking about people kind. They want to, in one, he corrected a young woman who was talking about the future of mankind. And he said, no, mademoiselle, miss, you have to say people kind. So they are reinventing language. And this is what I call woke ideology. Reinventing language just to, I would say, to make citizen not aware of what is happening. It's quite interesting. We always say the devil is in the detail. So if you go a little bit more far,
I think Tim wanted to make a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
This is taken from the Ministry of Truth in Orwell's 1984, right? Where by making minor modifications to the language, you begin to shift the focus of the culture.
Exactly.
Right. So this is a hyper feminist focus that will feed intersectionalism.
Well, it's
intersectionalism is going to be the engine of next stage Marxism. And this
it's always the way. The best way to control people is through their emotion. If they cannot control, if you don't have a moral code, you don't have, you're not aware of your duty or your limits, somebody will limit you. And we will go a little bit more further. If you go
wait, before we go forward, we have some questions. I was going to bring them up at the end.
Go ahead.
Some of them are about natural rights. And as always, if you guys could share the room, we'd appreciate it. So the first two are from Wolf and Sue. Let me read them both, and then you guys comment. They're on natural law. Wolf, theologize natural law, i.e. nature, is the hard boundary condition that few can overpower beyond fragmentary glimpses of effect and duration. So he sells thesauruses door to door. And Sue Kellen Dyer, natural law is a philosophical and legal theory positing that certain rights, moral values, and legal principles are inherent in human nature or the natural order, independent of human-made laws. Maybe go Andre and then Tim.
They are both right. They're both right. I will take a very small example. Somebody who's not educated at all, never went to college, never went to university, barely reads and writes, knows that it is against nature to kill somebody. They feel it. This is intuition. This is quite like Tim mentioned. The reality is there. And if you undermine the reality, one day, what will happen? The law of man will precede the natural behavior of people. This is very dangerous what they're doing. But it does not surprise me because Quebec is a weak province. philosophically speaking. They never talk about this. Nobody talks about this. Nobody really understand. We are under practically a spell here, and you can explain them for historical reason. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
Um, Sue Kellen's definition sets up Wolff's hard limit conditions, and that hard limit is nature itself, right? If you test gravity, gravity will win. So that's a physical hard limit. And the soft hard limit is human behavior. And that's Wolff's, I believe that's what Wolff is identifying is it does not matter how hard you try to ignore the way humans are, right? The inherent nature, right? That inherent nature of humanity, that inherent nature of a tree will grow toward the sun, full stop. If you want it to grow in a different direction, you have to manipulate it, right? If you want mankind to behave in a different manner than he would naturally behave, you have to manipulate it. And sooner or later, man bucks the manipulation, and history's full of it. History's full of it. What baffles me is that these people at the top or whatever level they're at here actually think they can successfully modify human behavior in the long term. They actually believe that to be true. I don't understand that. But we've talked about that briefly too, suggesting that one of the reasons why people on the right have so much difficulty converting or persuading people on the left is because people on the left don't think like that. If people on the left are more inclined to interpret via lived experience than they are inclined to interpret via data, right? Actual proof, then they're never going to swing over. They're not. And so the impasse will remain. So for me to think, why aren't these idiot Marxist government leaders thinking forward enough to see their own end and how bad it will? Why are they not seeing this? Why are they not preparing it? So Payman remarks a lot about, I'm going to forget the 3 steps: creating the condition,
Acceptance,
right?
Depression.
Because right, the 5 stages of grief. No, the 3 stages of organizing change, right? Is I planned it, I caused the crisis, right? I provide the solution because I have a goal, right? So knowing that, how can they write a document like this and think, oh, this will succeed? What? No, because it's failed the last 17 times someone tried to be communist, right? So what makes you think it's going to? So the whole thing baffles me, and they sit in their ivory towers, not with any grasp of what's actually happening on the street. Meanwhile, the people on the street are so busy doing what they're doing or not paying attention. They're being ignorant, and they're heaping this upon their own head through their ignorance. And that also baffles me, where the quote unquote right or even the center still believes, after all the garbage we've seen the last 10 years and the escalation since 2020, they still believe that the government has their best interest in heart.
In 2022 and 21-22, the government was ruling by decree for 2 years here with the agreement of the entire opposition. 125 MLA were voting the curfew, were voting the vaccination passport. Do you believe that we have an opposition here? It was not an opposition. And what shocked many people in 2022 is that the actual government increased its majority in the 2022 election, exactly during the pandemic. So what you were mentioning, not only they're completely disconnect from reality, but they are ignorant of laws. They are ignorant of human nature. They're ignorance of governance. I showed you all the demise with the money of Quebecers. It's astonishing. And I'm even talking, I can just touch on the carbon tax here. we still pay 25% more than the rest of Canada for nothing. It's quite. I'm not talking about equalization. We can talk. We can go into this, but in this text, it's an improvisation. Tim, your house is on fire, and you're doing your grocery list. The house is on fire in Quebec, and those people, they think that they will be able to reunite Quebecers. It will never work. Even the opposition party who was supposed to create the sovereignty is against this bill. And we will talk about a little bit about abortion later. You will see this. It's even more funny when we
Sorry, before going on, I wanted to share my thoughts on
go
national
ahead.
law. There was a gentleman on X that I had a communication with, and he said the purpose of government is to facilitate commerce between people. That's another way of saying government exists to secure your rights. I just look at people, and people are magnificent creatures. They're capable. They can act independently. Government is just there to make sure the roads, basically, nobody kills everybody. That's natural law. And Andre, you mentioned what Charles Fichtner said. If you take a child and that child, hits another child, they understand that's wrong. That's against natural law. If you and I, we've all probably killed people in our dreams. Like, you just feel that sense of guilt. It's wrong. That's natural law. But now they're replacing that in government.
You're right, and it's nice that you mentioned Charles Fichtner, because I think Tim mentioned it also. We were talking about information, knowledge, and wisdom, and Tim was referring to principle, policies, and project. So you have the bottom up. I know, and I do agree with Tim. The grassroots movement, but the top-down leaders who have a moral code, a moral duty that you have. If you're the president of a country, you have to lead by example. You have to inspire people. If you start to rob or you're corrupted, people will imitate you. They will imitate you. They will say, "Yeah, you see, at the top they're corrupted. Why I should not do it?" So I think the actual government is not only lying to Canadians; they are incompetent, even maybe evil. So if you go to the next section,
We
you
have
have
one
another.
more question from Sue. It's relevant to the men and women rights supersede religion. It's a little bit of a long one, if you guys can bear with me.
Go ahead.
Under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, neither Section 15, Equality Rights including gender equality, nor Section 2A, Freedom of Religion, automatically prevails over the other. Both are fundamental rights, and conflicts between them are resolved through judicial balancing, often on a case-by-case basis, using the Oakes test to determine if a restriction on one right is justified under Section 1, reasonable limits in a free and democratic society. Andre, and then Tim.
Well, first of all, the Charter of Right and Freedom, equality rights, including gender equality. I'm starting to find that maybe the details or what was happening, what we're seeing now with the gender ideology wasn't the intention, first intention. Freedom of religion, okay, I agree with you, but think about what is happening with the Muslim community. We talk about the Sharia law. It is in 2005 they wanted to implement the Sharia law in Ontario. That was 20 years ago. It didn't work, but now they're getting closer and closer to be able to impose their system. We think about in the Sharia law, you cannot you don't have usury, but they use fees. So they're slowly gaining ground, and I think the Charter of Right is not perfect, but the idea was to be able to have all citizens are equal, no matter what their biological sex, no matter what their color, their religion. That was, I think, the spirit of the Charter. How is it? How is it applied today? I think it is not. It's not relevant anymore, because we see minorities are all trying to increase their power.
The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, whether it's a good document or not a good document, is moot to the discussion because this Quebec document wants to amend the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which means we're not happy with the Canadian Charter of Freedom. We think conditions have changed, and we are going to address those conditions of change. So when you read the Quebec Constitution that says this is how we are going to manage equality. So now it's equality on a scale. Maybe that's what we should say. We'll just call it equality on a scale and hope that you're at the top of the scale. Because next week that might change. Because intersectionalism says, well, this is our poster child for this month. This is our poster child for next month. The two things are broken here. One is the province cannot supersede a federal law. Cannot do it, right? You can make side deals and side arrangements, but you cannot supersede the law. So this Quebec Constitution is a non-document. It's a non-document. It is from the get-go. It is a thumb. Why do I keep saying a thumbs up? It's not a thumbs up. It's the thumbing their nose, right? They're thumbing their nose at the federal government, saying, "You're not the boss of me." So discussions about the federal documents are moot because Quebec has decided, or this party has decided, that this is the direction it wants to take Quebec. It doesn't, and so it will modify federal documents to meet their own needs. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors.
You mentioned something important. You know, the Charter of Right was not signed by Quebec in 1982, but we're still bound by it unless we use the notwithstanding clause. And when we use this, it has to be challenged in front of the Supreme Court. So there's a long process, a long legal process. And by writing a document like this, it's like they want to shortcut the process, or they want to make sure that it's like a de facto law. It will be like this. No, it doesn't work like this. And a little bit further in the text, they even refer to international community, which is again something that is quite fascinating. And later, I will refer to Daniel Johnson, his proposition. We will talk about this. If
Let
you
me just,
go,
if I
go
can
ahead,
just
Payman.
share my thoughts as well. I think what Sue here is saying is she prefers this to what's in the Quebec one, where the Quebec is like, this is the rule, this will supersede that.
But that doesn't matter.
Right, but anyway, that's her argument.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the charter, none of this matters. I'm kind of moot, like what Tim said. If you have a standing army, which is what law enforcement and RCMP is, it doesn't matter what's in here. The government's going to steamroll you. If it says you cannot violate payments, freedom of speech, and they have the RCMP, they'll come in with Bill C9 and they'll crush my rights. That's
Yes.
my
Yeah.
Okay.
I see it's cartoonish, but I see this in my head where I'm 14 years old and my mom comes into my room and starts cleaning up because I'm a slob. And I get mad at my mom and say, "This is my room, get out of my room. You can't this is my room, get out of my room." So I put a sign on the other side, the outside facing of my door, and I say, private property, stay out or else. Right? And mom comes down a week later and she can tell that the room needs to be tidied up, and she just opens the door and walks right back in. Right? My rules, my little law, my little public statement of, dominance. Yeah, she's like, "My house, kid. When you start paying the mortgage, then you can talk."
Well, she has
And
a
right
monopoly on the standing army that is your dad's backhand.
Isn't it though? Right? Like all the metaphors are there. All the metaphors are there, right? You wait till your father gets home, right? So that would be Carney saying, I'm taking these despicable RCMP and sending them to your door.
Yep.
Okay, so go to page 10, and we will talk about the state.
We skipped page 9. Did you want to collective rights?
Chapter 2 of is collective right. Quebec nation holds intrinsic and inalienable collective right. Why I just highlighted that is because you practically see nowhere what we call individual right. A socialist country does not focus on people, it focuses on the state. We will talk about this a little bit later. If you go at page 10, nation has
Sorry.
the right to secular parliamentary governmental judicial institution and to secular public service. That's accessory. Go to page 10.
Okay.
Okay, this is interesting. The states ensures the protection of the nation common heritage, Québécois, Québécois, whatever. It's not important. Maybe it's about translation. Which heritage? There's no way we talk about the patrimonial heritage. There's no way we talk, nowhere in this document you talk about the history of French Canadian. Nowhere you talk about the Christian heritage. Nothing is defined. They talk about the heritage, but what is it? If we think about the two founding people, the Canadians or the English people, and now I would say the English, the Irish, the Scottish, the native people, and you have the French Canadian people or the French people, you have two founding people. We refer to history. Nowhere in this document we refer into history. So what heritage are we defending here, protecting? This is, again, it shows that the improvisation and the lack of culture and knowledge of people who wrote this document. The second one is even more interesting. Water is a collective resource that is part of this common heritage. You say, okay, this is the heritage. There's no mention of individual right. And water is not a collective resource in the sense that you have to protect it, but it is a basic need for individual. And this is another example of globalization, because when you collectivize and monetize resource for the masses, I can quote Larry Fink from BlackRock, who said, water should be privatized and priced at its market value. And if water is privatized, someone will own it. The difference is you can protect the natural resource of water on a territory. Like Nestle is pumping water everywhere on the planet, and they pay practically nothing, and they sell you a bottle of water, $2, $3, depending on the region or whatever. So you can say to those big corporation, you will pay your fair share of the resources. But putting the water as a collective resources, while it is basic individual need, this is very dangerous, very dangerous. And I don't say people should not take care of the environment, taking care of the water. Now in Quebec, it's been practically 3 months that it did not rain. Now the St. Lawrence River, the Ontario Dam will be open to raise the level of the St. Lawrence River because it is too low. You can imagine the Beauharnois power plant has problem generating electricity now because the St. Lawrence River is low, and for the maritime the ship who are navigating on the St. Lawrence River, it's starting to be problematic. Okay, it means that we have to be careful about the resources, but people, they still need it. It's a national, it's a essential need. So this is quite fascinating. They always play the socialist approach and undermining the individual rights. This is another aspect that I discovered in this.
Tim, anything?
Point 20 is separating the state from the nation, and communism doesn't care. It's the same thing as far as they're concerned. And the phrase nation's common heritage Québécois, that's triggering people's amygdala. This is an appeal to emotion.
Exactly.
It's an appeal. There's nothing in this. And Andre's absolutely right. What common heritage? Do I see any mention of of Champlain? Right? Do I see any mention? Right? Do I see any mention of the loyalists returning back from America? Do I see any mention of battles or any any of the post-Napoleonic code or any of the early Catholic settlement, or none of that's mentioned here, because the ministry of truth demands that I leave a document that I can alter tomorrow.
This is
Right.
exactly, this is very important. The fact that a law can be changed tomorrow.
Well,
A
they don't have to change the
principle.
law. They just give it a mandate, and then you're fucked. Pardon my
Exactly.
French.
When we will talk about abortion, you will see it is quite fascinating. I will make a small comment about you mentioned Samuel de Champlain. When they did the bridge, the new bridge, Samuel de Champlain, between Montreal and the South Shore, because the old one was 50 years old and it was crumbling. They wanted to impose a new name for the bridge, and it was the name of Maurice Richard. You know, Maurice Richard was the great hockey player, one of the greatest hockey player of the Montreal Canadiens. And everybody, and even if you like hockey, I admire Maurice Richard, but they wanted to change the name for something that is more popular, that will appeal
Yes.
to people. And Quebecers, they said, no way. We want to keep the name Samuel de Champlain because this is part
Yeah.
of the history, the foundation of
Yeah.
what we call the Nouvelle France, or after that Lower Canada. So I think it is important. Those little details, you can see that the most people will disagree with this.
Yeah. And the second half of point 20, again, using the words common heritage, attaching water as a natural resource, and now calling it collective resource, not a natural resource, which is another slight to the natural law and our position, our subservience to the natural law, right? Because the only way I can defeat gravity is with technology, and preferably avoiding cliffs, right? Right? Don't fall off the top bunk. First they don't define common heritage, and
Not
then
at
they
all.
add water as part of this common heritage. I'm like, well, the waterways, because shipping lanes, because transport, because trade, because cities and towns on waterways, right? Small deltas and rivers, et cetera, et cetera. The livelihoods and culture built on the waterways, that would be common heritage, right? But then again, you can't do that because that's a nod to the preeminence of natural law. And then they call water a collective part. What they're saying now is collectivizing water. And the next step after you collectivize water is, several years back, a man in Seattle was collecting rainwater off of his roof and using it to water his lawn. And the water company took him to court and said, that's our water. And he went, it's the fucking rain. And the court agreed with the water company.
I can refer to Olivia Chow, who wanted to tax the water, the raining water. This is quite fascinating. The lunacy is not only in Quebec. And what you're mentioning, like I said, this bill is quite recent. I think they wrote this in panic. And because we have water shortage now in Quebec since 3 months, I think they included in this bill. If it would have happened last year, I'm pretty sure that it would not have been like this. Or if it is an order from the United Nations, they will say you have to include this in the bill. If you go to Payment, you want to add something?
Yes, I do. A couple of things. First of all, Gary, thank you for reposting the stream. If everybody could repost, we'd appreciate it. Gary made a funny comment. My new local hospital has been renamed that it's not in English or French.
Right.
The one thing, I think, Andre, you live in Quebec, and you probably, this is normal for you. Section 22, this is a secular, state is secular. I'm guessing what they mean is the state is like agnostic. There is no God. That's probably what they're hoping to one day put in there.
First of all, I will make a brief comment. You say, for me, it's normal. No, it is not. It is not. The state is not secular. The state is a religion. This is the new theocracy, and the state is a religion. So I disagree with this simple phrase. It is incredible. They undermine not only the faith or the spirituality or the desire of people to worship something that, but they say that's I'm sorry, the Bolshevik were acting exactly the same way. But in 1942, when they were losing the war, Stalin had to reopen the churches and had to let people go and worship God because they were losing it. People were saying, you know what, you with your war, we will not go again. You want to raise patriotism? It comes from pater, comes from the father, the authority. You want to raise patriotism? If you undermine the idea of a greater good, or you will end up like the Bolshevik in 1943.
The state is secular. Secular being a noun, all right, describing a state of being, but the behavior, the lifestyle, is secularism, and ism is a religion.
Exactly.
I'm oversimplifying it, but to live a particular lifestyle religiously, that means habitually, right, is religion.
I can
What they're really saying is they reject European Christianity. That's what they're really saying.
That's what they're really saying. And don't forget one thing: when they're acting like this, they drive people in a direction, and people are not aware of what is happening. You can okay, let's say in Quebec, we say it's a secular province. But I'm sorry, since 1 year, what I'm seeing now with the pushback of the Muslim community who is uh, praying in the street, I see a lot of people who are taking out their cross again. They're defending churches. Wait a second, you want to erase the history of Quebec, or the Lower Canada, or whatever, Nouvelle France? People will start to rise. If you go, Islam are called, yes, postmodern religion is right. If you go a little bit lower, payment, it's still at the same page where they say the state shall ensure the protection of interest of people, of children.
Do you see it?
You have, okay. Okay, the state ensures the protection of the child's interest and respect for rights recognized to him. Very nice, huh? There's no mention of any rights for children. Again, and I've discovered the new program for primary school and gender school, and they talk about positive sexuality, gender affirmation, uh, and it is the indoctrination is everywhere. I can tell you something. My daughter, she's 39 years old. She's a primary teacher. She has a daughter, and she's obliged to teach this to children starting 3 years old. So when we talk about the rights of children, the Quebec, what I say, the Quebec Culture and Citizenship Courses program, it is a program of indoctrination, positive sexuality, gender theory, stage of child development, the absence of family. This is black and white. It is written black and white. No family, no parents, no mother, no father. Here, we don't have father and mother. We have parent one and parent two in Quebec. No, I'm not joking. And it is incredible how this principle destroys the parental authority and turns children into the property of the state. And I will just say something. In the Soviet Union, and this is a joke, sexuality did not exist. Babies were manufactured by national factories and were the exclusive property of the Communist Party. I can guarantee you here we are professional in Quebec to undermine natural law. Again, children, biological male and female, and the churches. Here we were transforming churches into mini golf or condos. This I wrote extensively on that since practically 15 years. But here in Quebec, we don't have any religion except maybe Netflix. I will end on that for this part. Any comment?
The indoctrination, the sexual indoctrination, which is all deviant indoctrination. I see this as the cultural prelude to the 2 or 3 generations before you end up in Brave New World. Where in Brave New World, sexual impropriety is not only the norm, it's the thrust, right? There's a woman who says, well, I'm not really interested in going, changing. I saw this one guy, I liked him, I'm going to go see him again. And her girlfriends chide her for it, saying, well, you're supposed to be, seeing a variety of other people and keeping the flavor going. And so this, where we are now, will lead to a culture like that. And that same culture where those children in that novel, they're born out of a vat. They're genetically managed, right? They're created, and then a caste system is imposed through genetic manipulation in order to manage that society. So that, why do I forget the author's name so often? He's right on that. The pathway to that politically is going to be 1984. Where we are right now is Animal Farm.
Yeah, exactly.
Somewhere in between Animal Farm and 1984 will be Fahrenheit
451. 451.
Right? There is, you can actually
Ray
take
Bradbury,
novels, right? You can watch what's happening now, and you can take those 4 novels, and there'll probably be some others that will fit in there as well. That's the timeline. That's the process. And if you don't want to end up 150 years from now in the year of our Ford, 2267 or whatever, where your children are born in a vat and you live a particular lifestyle, and the one strange man who's been hiding away, if you don't want to end up in that, if that's where you want your children to go, then continue to do what you're doing. Because we are no longer the time to act was the last election, right? And 122 conservative MPs managed to still lose their largest victory in the history of the country, their largest as a party, and they still managed to lose. And that's on them, not on the people, although the people will bear their own responsibility. What's happening in Quebec is, and I said this before the show, as in Quebec, so in Canada. And you want to look for the proof text of that, look what they did to Newfoundland and the Maritimes with this bubble nonsense during COVID. And look what they did to BC, and the new Liberal Party stepped in intentionally to manage COVID because they wanted the buttons, and watch what they did out there. But you watch what has happened in Quebec is what's going to happen everywhere else, because Quebec is 1/3 of the country's population. That's the perfect testing ground. You take the most difficult, isolated, sovereignist, Anglo-Franco, right? The most self-abused group in Canada, and you get them under your thumb, everyone else will fall like dominoes.
You have something to add, Payman?
I do. Do you want to respond to Tim before I share my thoughts?
I will very briefly. The only place in America where you had a curfew before Christmas was in Quebec. And where did the freedom movement start? In Alberta. So here it is a laboratory. Quebec is a weak society, or threatened because of the language and because of the small population. So they will test it here first. And I think Tim is right. If it works here, they will try to implement it everywhere.
There's I want to share a joke that Married with Children, it was this show in the 80s and 90s. This guy, loser guy, he's got no money, and he's arguing with this other guy who's got no money, and the guy, like, he takes off his shoe and he's like, "This is my best sock," and it's got this big hole in it. Al Bundy, he takes off his shoe and he's like, "This is my only sock. Like, the front half is missing." That's what it feels like with Quebec and the West. You know, me and Tim were like, "BC's the worst." Andre, you're like, "No, we're worse." So it's a contest to see which province is more crazy. I won't share my thoughts on this, Bill. Do you want to? Where should we go from here, Andre?
You can go just the next one. The state protects women's freedom.
Oh, sorry. This?
Exactly. Now it is interesting. And you have another one that is at the bottom of the text. And the state protects women's freedom to have an abortion, voluntary pregnancy. So let's open the can of worm here. In 2022, the judgment of Roe versus Wade was overruled in the United States toward abortion. And in Quebec, we had the famous Dr. Henry Morgan Tyler, who was opening abortion clinic everywhere. And he was celebrated for being one of the greatest abortionists in Canada. And we never stated, or we never really had a debate about what is abortion. And in Quebec, we decided that we will be the leader in the movement, and we will permit women to have an abortion, and we will call this a right. Same thing with maid. So my question, it is, how come we are arriving at a state where many people complain about the low demography, no replacement birth, and we permit people to kill even more babies? The baby, the fetus, is not the extension of the woman because it's a different DNA. So we have to understand, they have to understand what they're doing. You don't want baby, don't conceive it. Even you can even refer to contraception. But this is in a constitution. The two only rights that are written in a document that is not a constitution, they protect two behavior. And after that, a little bit later, a little bit lower in the text, they say, "Oh, we will defend. If let's say, I will just find it. It is quite funny because it's one of the two. It's at page 33. If you go page 33, it's quite fascinating. Any person whose condition requires it has the right to receive end-of-life care, subject to the specific requirements set out in the act respecting end-of-life care." This is made. They called it aide médicale à mourir in French. Me, I call this euthanasia. And don't forget one thing: Quebec now is the leader, the global leader on euthanasia. Not any other country. The statistics in 2023, it is where you have most euthanasia per capita on the planet. It is in Quebec. They put this in a constitution. I'm really impressed to see that a government who says wants to protect the people, but which people are we talking about? There will be no more people. And this is quite shocking.
And this behavior has been with us for 3 generations. Because I was having a conversation about similar topics with my mother, who's 77. And she said she remembers ads when she was younger, after the pill became publicly acceptable in the North American culture. I remember seeing ads in magazines and newspapers with a young woman fashionably dressed with the ski hill drawn behind her. And she said, I'm not about to let this interrupt my ski weekend. And this is in the 50s and 60s, right? So that bourgeois, right, I'm attitude has been with us for 3 generations.
There's one thing you're mentioning this young woman. Don't forget that rich people, they use surrogate mother, because they don't want those young rich women who are very rich. They don't give birth. They will just give their oversight, and they will have a surrogate mother. And we have this in France. I had an interview with Maria Pumi, who wrote a book in 2009 about commercializing human life. It's shocking. You see it in Ukraine. You see it everywhere. But what we are arriving at a point now, when you include this in a bill of law, you say, wait, it will be not mandatory. It will be protected. You know what is funny? People who are pro choice, they're against it. They're against it. They're against it because they say it's only in the bill of law. It means that it could be overruled, like you mentioned earlier, Tim. So it is quite funny. Everybody is opposing this bill of law, but for the wrong reasons. The pro-choice will say, it's my body, it's my choice. Of course, we remember 2021 when they wanted to impose this injection to people. Suddenly, it's not my body, my choice. So, and you think about the abortion, the contraception pill. It's the same thing. It's always the same pattern. They baby steps, and one day they increase the pace, and they arrive and they undermine the philosophy of people. That this is not an individual right at all.
Scanning through this document, and I call it a document because it's not a constitution.
It's not a constitution,
and it's not. Neither is it a bill.
Neither.
Because it tries to be both, and you cannot do that. An administrator would not create this document. A bureaucrat would not create this document. An uneducated politician would create this document. Or worse, a committee would create this document. This is not a constitutional document. It doesn't have the right. It doesn't have the right format. It doesn't have the right language. It doesn't have the right tone. It is not a bill of law because it's trying to be a document with too much flexibility. The law says this is the human boundary. We are establishing the fence. This is the fence. It doesn't say we're going down to the seashore and we'll stick our toes in the water. Maybe we'll be there at high tide. Maybe we'll be there at low tide. We don't know. Whatever. And if it's a rainy day, then maybe we'll make everybody wear umbrellas, but they'll have to be rainbow umbrellas because we don't want to leave out that group of people. The document has too much flexibility. The language is indecisive and imprecise. It's trying to be too much all at once. And it continues to thumb its nose at Daddy Ottawa and Mama Canada, saying, you're not the boss of me. That's all this is. And if it actually manages to be pushed through in some Frankensteinian document, Quebec's screwed, because you'll have to undo that entire thing and purge it out of the system later after it's already caused a brand new set of damages. And if the only things it really defines, other than water, right, is we have no definition of life, and we mask government assisted suicide as a end of life care. That's more 1984, right?
You mentioned Animal Farm, 1984. One thing that you just mentioned, you said it is a committee. You know, in the text, it is funny because they talk about the constitutional committee, and I told myself they're copying. They're so not imaginative that they're copying the Privy Council. They're copying the structure of the Privy Council to say that, okay, the committee will decide later. Okay, you will elect what, or you will name 3-4 people who will be the wise people who will decide for everybody. I'm pretty sure that they don't know who they can nominate it.
Andre, first of all, thanks, Squirrel Nuts, for sharing the stream. If anyone else can share it, we'd appreciate it. We're reaching the 90-minute mark, Andre. If you have more, we can go. But if you want to wrap up, I would recommend bringing it back to what you said at the very beginning, a high-level view of a government in free fall that's panicking, and they're bringing this Marxist constitution to shore up the voters.
Okay, I will just say one more thing, and we can wrap it up. You know, recently, France inserted the right to abortion into its constitution. Isn't it curious? When France was imposing very drastic measure in France during the COVID era, 2 weeks after, it is 2 weeks to flatten the curve or 2 weeks to implement it in Quebec. We were copying everything France was doing. And I will just say a small phrase. If we believe that English Canada is the vassal of the British Crown, then we can say that French Canada is France poodle. We copy them. Historically speaking, we are influenced by the New France, Nouvelle France idea, or by French because we have the civil code and many ideas and we speak French. But out of that, when Macron does a stupid thing in France, you can be sure that 2 weeks after, Legault will do the same stupid thing in Quebec. And if it is not Legault, it will be another one, but they all copy the stupidity of France. They think that France is the center of the world because it's the old Europe. And it is quite funny. I will end on that, and I will just end maybe, and we can answer a question. When you think about the idea is that there's no mention of individual right. We have, I was referring to the feminine form, which is like a way to have a matriarchal and feminist society. Euthanasia and abortion, and the child is a responsibility of the state. In 1968, Daniel Johnson, who was the prime minister of Quebec at the time, of the Union Nationale, National Union, he proposed a commission to the federal government and all the provinces and territories so they can have a debate about what could be a constitution for Canada. That was in 1968. And in the text, I would like to read two small quotes that explains the philosophy of a constitution. He says, the first quote is, it's a project 1968, just before he died. He said, the constitution of a country is not only intended to establish its political structures and form of government, it must also have educational value. It must inspire feelings of pride and loyalty in the entire population, generate understanding and friendship, and promote concerted action in pursuit of a common vision. It must therefore be based on certain fundamental principles, again, we think about Charles Fichtner, to which citizen and government themselves can spontaneously adhere. End quote. That's the first one. This document does not inspire nothing, does not inspire proudness, happiness, friendship. It's something that antagonizes people and that makes them instrument of the state. The second quote, and I will end on that, from the same document of Daniel Johnson. He wrote, the first principle that must be affirmed in our Constitution is undoubtedly the absolute sovereignty of Canada, which in no way exclude recognition of its duty to the international community and to organization dedicated to maintaining world peace. Sovereignty does not mean isolation, but it does mean that today's Canada cannot recognize a constituent authority that would be located, even theoretically, outside itself. End quote. When you're sovereign, you decide. And you can say to people, I'm sovereign and I will respect your sovereignty. And what they're doing with this bill of law, it's only a reaction of panic, and it's improvised. Thank you. We're on Cerberus at the Improv. It's improvised and it has no legal value at all. I will end on that.
Tim, any comments?
No, Andre's done well.
Any question?
When's lunch?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I just like I said, it's very alarming for the country. This is the first time, I understand it might not be an official constitution, but it's the first time that you have full-on Marxism entering and taking over a constitution of a province of Canada purely to win an election.
Yes.
And if this succeeds, it's going to spread like a virus to all the other provinces.
Well, one thing I could say, when we had this space yesterday with Sukan and Dyer, she was worried about I would say the power grab of minorities, and I was saying I was disagreeing with one woman about the emotional aspect of Quebec versus the rational aspect of Alberta. And this woman, she was saying, but we have to be more emotional, patriotic in the movement in Alberta, the sovereignist movement. And I was saying, I do agree with you, but if it comes from the people, if it is grassroots, you need a leader. You need a leader, and you need a strategy. Because do not forget one thing: the federal government will not gladly permit Alberta to attain their sovereignty. There will be a fight, a constitutional fight, and when you want to fight, you have to prepare. We can see with this bill of law in Quebec that, first of all, they're not prepared, they're ideologically oriented, and they don't rely on people at all. And when I was saying, okay, they defend the people or they defend the state, they defend the structure of the state because they do not defend the people.
So maybe the question for the grassroots to ask is, if we know that the government is entirely incompetent and all they have left is brute force, what's stopping us from setting this right?
Okay, how do we do this, Tim?
Grassroots level. Get your family sorted out, right? Find a way to, do what myself and my mother and my son are doing. The three of us are sharing a 3-bedroom house under one roof. Immediately saves all of us an extraordinary amount of money and frees that up. And myself and my mother, we live on, right, a restricted income. And so this has improved our local and immediate quality of life, and bolsters against whatever's coming down the line, because it sets a pattern and shows to families, you can find a way to live together without wanting to choke the living hell out of each other every Friday evening. There is a way to do this. So it doesn't sound like I'm suggesting that you go out and do a protest. Why? Because some jackbooted thug's going to punch your mother in the face. That's why. There are more effective ways to do that, right? This is a Martin Luther King Jr. type of event, right? You want a quiet revolution? The quiet revolution is get your family sorted. Because if you get your family sorted and you're well enough to go over to your neighbor and say, hey, do you need, there's a lot of snow. I'm going to go shovel your driveway. That's what we need to bring back to our Canada. We bring back that 70s, 60s, and 70s and 80s attitude of giving a shit about your neighbor and not tossing your kids out on the street when they turn 18, and removing back to that type of structure. And then everybody will have lunch, Gary, right?
Are you talking about the lunch for children that Carney promised?
Right, but even it's everybody's promising lunch. I think lunch will come with $10 a day daycare, don't you?
Well, the lunch will cost $5, or you will have $5 of lunch, but it will cost $50 to the state.
That's right. Yeah.
There was one comment. There was one comment from Gary withdrawing from the UN.
100%.
You know, when I talk about international community or international interest, and I refer to Daniel Johnson in 1968, the context was quite different. The United Nations of 1968 and what we're seeing now, it has nothing No, because you had the trilateral, the Club of Rome in 1972. They hijacked the sovereignty of country, and now the United Nations is an instrument of a weaponized instrument to implement a global agenda. He's right.
Yeah.
He's right.
I think when I look back on it, and grant you in 1982, how old was I in 82? 14. 1982 was the UN Year of the Child. Does anybody remember that, all that stuff? It was a great big deal. Planet wide, it was a great big deal, right? Year of the Child, that was the end. That was the end of sovereignty.
Yes.
The Year of the Child. And they said, child has these rights, child has these rights, child has these rights. And Dr. Benjamin Spock's books was everywhere where you were no longer, no longer permitted by law, to physically discipline your child. So yes, unions and organizations, unions are no longer interested in respecting the membership. They become bloated pigs eating at the trough of their union members' dues. There's a liquor store down the street from where I live, a BC liquor store, and the BC GEU is out there. They're protesting, and they're on. It burns me. I just want to ask them. So, is your union leader taking strike pay also? Right? Because it's not. He's taking his full salary while you're sitting out there at half pay, trying to make a point. Yeah.
I want to go to this question. Well, comment. There's already fighting. Bill C-8 is essentially a declaration of war on Canadian liberty. If the Liberals win again in the election, I can guarantee you car bombs and insurrection. Yeah, I highly doubt Canadians even have it in them. A lot of us learned how to wage war in Ukraine, so bringing that to the home front will really wake people up, like David Eby.
Well, I can just make a small comment about the war in Ukraine. There's there's a big misunderstanding in Russia now, because there's a lot of people in the population who are saying why the war is continuing. It's not about NATO. It's about the government. The central government in Russia doesn't want the fighters to come back because they will clean the shit. Because they're fighting in the front line for 3 years. No matter we agree or disagree in Russia, it's not important. And those people, they know what will happen if they come back, and if the government does not support people. What we see in Quebec, not in Quebec, in Canada, sorry for the Freudian slip. What we see in Canada, it's the same thing. People one day will be fed up. They will be fed up. And yes, we will see car bombs and insurrection. Don't forget 1970, we had bombs in mailboxes in Quebec. It was a small group of idealist people, not mature, who were practically hijacked by the RCMP and the CIA, and they started the movement, the Front de Libération du Québec. Maybe we will see something like this. I don't know, but I see Canadians are starting to be fed up of the political class, and how they will react. This is something we don't know.
So I see two possible futures, and they're probably connected at some point in time. One is I would like to see us resist by strengthening the family structure, because ultimately we see that the goal is to separate from the family everything that is and assign that to the state.
Yes.
We see that. So then the resilience, let's take their word back from them, the resilient family will have a better chance of surviving. However, I don't think at this point that is enough. I really do think that there will be physical conflict of the kind that I probably shouldn't say online. I really do.
Well, I think you're right. And the idea behind that is not only to tell people to prepare, but to try to understand how they can influence. Because think about an MP or an MLA, they never answer any question. It's quite fascinating. I didn't watch the press conference of Carney yesterday, but Ezra Levant from Rebel News was there and asking questions. And Carney was not answering at all. Oh, Rebel News is not a media. I don't care. Is relevant is a Canadian citizen. He asks a question to the Prime Minister of Canada. His duty is to answer, and they don't answer.
I guess we can end it. I was just laughing at Sue's comment. Uh, we can end it there. I thought it was a really good episode. I wanted to thank Andre. You did a fantastic job. You did all the preparation for this show. I just rolled out of bed. I don't know about Tim.
You look like you just rolled out of bed.
I always look like I rolled out of bed. If we scroll up to the top, Sue, right at the beginning of the hour.
Yes.
At the beginning of the episode.
Yes.
Heyman looks exhausted. It's not easy reading all your comments, Sue.
They're very first of all they're very interesting, and I was not very paying attention of this bill of law because I think the actual government is a bunch of criminal and clowns. You can quote me on that.
Unfortunately, there's enough of the Canadian population that's satisfied to see them sit where they are.
Oh, that's you're totally right, but they're always not they're brainwashed by mainstream media. But when I saw this week there was starting to be opposition on this bill, and it was funny. I said, wait, maybe it's about time to tell all the Canadian, and especially English Canadian, because they are not connected really to what is happening. Like I was not connected to what was happening in Alberta, Nova Scotia, and BC. Maybe it's time for them to understand what is happening here, because it concerned all Canadians.
Now I'm thinking of 2 more times in history when this seemed to be happening. You said that there is infighting where these small parties are fighting amongst themselves in the legislature. Did that not happen during Robespierre's time after the French Revolution?
Of course.
Small organizations would move into positions of power, and then other ones would take them down, and then other ones would, and this lasted for about 3-4 years, and oftentimes was quite bloody. Did this not also happen in the early Bolshevik?
Same thing.
Right? So the first few years when Lenin was in control, when it took quite a while, there was even an actual civil war that went as far east as Siberia and brought on the White Army.
Exactly.
So that was a full. There were millions of men involved in that, and the West doesn't really know very much about it. So there are these. Are we entering a similar period now? Grant you, this is a provincial level, but we're not too terribly different out in BC, except Rustad's bending over and giving them what they want. So yeah, we're explaining anniversary gifts. And I'll take gold, thank you. Actually, silver is useful as well.
25 years.
Right? Are we not experiencing, to some varying degree, if this infighting starts at a provincial level, as in Quebec, so everywhere else? And if that's the case, then this infighting, this personality conflict between parties and personalities, totally supports Gary's statement. Was it Gary? Wolf's statement about natural law. You cannot put up a permanent barrier or permanently manage the behavior of a human being. Even those who are initially well aligned, the moment someone begins to move to the top of the pyramid, there will be conflict because it's human nature.
And you're right. And, bringing this bill of law to all Canadian, for me, it's also a way to reaffirm my Canadian identity, meaning that I do not undermine the French Canadian history. I'm starting to rediscovering it through many people I met. They're historian, and I'm understanding that the movement, what we call the Quiet Revolution, was hijacked, and now we arrive at an historic moment. And that's why I say to Albertan people, for example, be careful, prepare yourself, prepare your strategy, talk about it, talk about why you want to separate, and will you make an alliance with United States? What would happen after a referendum? If it is an historic moment, all Canadian, we have to be able to discuss and debate about this. And I'm not sure that the actual government, whether they are federal or provincial, I'm not sure they're up to the task. They're not up to the task
At dinner last night,
or the challenge.
a very good friend of mine said, if there is any separation and joining the United States, even theoretically, said I would like to see Saskatchewan to go first, so that when the map is drawn, it looks like this.
There's a man I would vote for prime minister. All right, guys, let's end it there. And again, Andre, thank you for your hard work. Tim,
It was a pleasure.
I guess a big thank you to the audience as well.
Yes, of course, and they had very great comments. Thanks to all of them.
Bye, guys.
Bye.